Request of the council and in light of the results of our referendum, the council wished for us to bring forth an opportunity to re-engage you all on our transportation strategy. And so Brian Solis is our transportation planner inside the SGA division of planning department, and he has provided some continuity charts so that bring you back up to speed on where we're at and provide you some information regarding your discussions on where we go from here. So with that, Brian Solis.
Brian, we're glad to have you, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. With us today, we have a number of folks from the planning and public works side of the house that work on improving your transportation infrastructure and services throughout the city, with Ron Williams. Mark Shea is a transportation planner that works with me, and Wayne Wilcox is your bikeways and trails planner, and then Barry Frankenfield tries to keep us all straight in the director's office, and then we have Tom Leahy, Phil Davenport, and Bobby Wheeler, who helped work on the Virginia Beach Light Rail Extension project.
All y'all with us today. Thank you for your work.
So, while I have 7 items on here for the agenda, what I wanted to do is kind of focus on 2 areas, because there's a lot of different tangents we can go down, and the 2 areas I wanted to focus on, keeping these 7 things in mind, are the east-west former Norfolk Southern right-of-way corridor, and then citywide bus service, and speaking about those when we're keeping these 7 items in mind. So it's been a couple months since I last visited you, and since that last time we had a briefing on public transportation. We had the third of 3 referendum related to extending fixed skyway transit, in this case light rail, into our city. And I think what's clear when you look at all 3 of those referendum is that we need to come up with a better set of solutions that gets a consensus among the community in terms of providing public transportation in our city, and how and what part we are in the region. When you go to the 4th slide, it's a relatively small map, but what it's meant to show is kind of the web of public transportation services that are provided on the south side of Hampton Roads for those that are provided by Hampton Roads Transit. And we're one of 6 cities that are part of a cost allocation agreement. In addition, you have Hampton and Newport News on the peninsula that also have service that we connect to. Most recently, with the Winter Storm Helena, we had kind of a core of snow routes that HRT coordinated directly with the participating cities' public works departments to basically create a working relationship that the cities guarantee that those streets are plowed and maintained, but not the sidewalks, and HRT agrees to provide services. And in Virginia Beach, it's kind of a core circle there that are shown in the red, that as well as Route 20, which goes up and down Virginia Beach Boulevard, that are provided during snow events. But focusing on Virginia Beach, I think this map does well to show those routes within Virginia Beach that currently have bus service, annual bus service. There's a variety of frequencies, evenings, mornings, and weekends that are provided based on where these red lines are, but this is just meant to show you what corridors currently have service. The blue are those corridors that we believe we should be looking at to expand our public transportation network. And some of them were included, most of them were included in the with the light rail extension project, with expanding bus service feeding into that station, that hub station at Town Center, and we believe this is a good starting point to look at corridors to expand service within. Not all of them, but most of them. So all this slide is meant to do is show you, when you go to HRT's website, and it's very easy to look at what routes are within which of the 6 participating cities. And for Virginia Beach, those are on your left here, the number of the routes, and when you click on those routes, a specific map and a schedule comes up Monday through Sunday. Most of our routes in Virginia Beach do not have Sunday service, but it provides you very specific time frames for how frequent the buses come and when they come throughout the day. Summarized in the top right there is we basically have 11 year-round routes. Of those, roughly 5 of them connect to Norfolk and Chesapeake, and then you can go throughout the system from there. We have 3 seasonal routes, and one of those is the trolley that runs down Atlantic and Pacific Avenues, and we're looking at piloting a 4th seasonal route from the bayfront to and from the oceanfront this season coming up. We also have on the bottom right here several MAX routes, and what these are the larger buses that have Wi-Fi on them and go directly from park-and rides to large employment destinations in the region. So in looking at a snapshot of ridership, and this is strictly for buses, for those routes, those riders, as best as we can count them, that come throughout Virginia Beach, we're looking at roughly 4.5 to 5 million riders a year. And similar to bus service throughout the country, it has been trending down parallel with fuel costs, or fuel prices, I should say. And we represent roughly 35% of HRT's bus service to 13 to 14 million riders a year. The busiest route in the entire HRT system is Route 20. That ranges from 3,800 to 4,500 riders per day, and that goes from the oceanfront to downtown Norfolk and back on relatively frequent service. So in terms of goals, again, we're looking at primarily, for the purposes of this briefing, the former Norfolk Southern Right-of-Way and then citywide bus service. We believe that $40 million investment is, we need to reinforce that the city has a commitment to setting aside that corridor for connectivity. And that means utilities, technology, it means bikeways and trails, which we call active transportation is the term being used today, and potentially high-capacity transit or maybe even innovation in the future. And I'll touch on that a little bit more coming up in this briefing. For citywide bus service, we believe there's support in the public to improve public transportation, and we'd like to develop a plan that has the public's feedback and insight, as well as stakeholder groups, those that are both transit dependent and those folks that we are targeting for what we call choice riders, those folks that have transportation options like cars at their disposal, but take transit as an option because it's easier to get around. We're also making a commitment to improve our infrastructure in terms of sheltering more of the over 500 bus stops throughout our city and improving connectivity and accessibility to and from them. One thing that, from a planning standpoint, is a little bit concerning, or a lot concerning, is I believe we have a relatively unhealthy mode split for commuting in Hampton Roads. We're currently only 0.8% of folks commuting to and from work to home and back commute via public transportation. And that could be, the reason why is because it's an opportunity to reduce congestion and provide additional options to get around. So this comes from our MPO, our Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, and showing you, comparing certain, these are different tiers of service areas. The smallest being Rochester, second smallest being Buffalo, and then we're in the tier with your Charlottes and your top 50 cities in the country. And again, when you look at the mode split, we're exponentially less than most in terms of options to be able to get around and to commute and support our large employers. Currently, the way that we're set up is 40% of cities pay for transit service. 40% is picked up by state and federal governments, and on average, 20% is picked up by the fare box. And that fluctuates. The top two on this particular chart are heavily supported by large universities that they serve. So the city has a strategic work plan that city staff uses to implement city council's vision that's reinforced during your mid-year and annual retreats. And those are broken up into the city's 7 businesses. And that may sound familiar from your budget. That's the way your budget document is set up. In terms of cultural recreational opportunities, economic vitality, quality of physical environment, family and youth opportunities, quality education, lifelong learning. And these are some strategies that are actually in our city strategic work plan. And one of them is to be intentional about improving our bicycle and pedestrian network, our active transportation network. Second one here in terms of economic vitality is basically supporting our tourism industry to get folks to and from and around Virginia Beach and the region once they're here. Connectivity also means, in terms of economic vitality, we added this one this year through Warren's office, and that is acknowledging that we want to be a mid-Atlantic hub for transatlantic fiber, whether it be from Europe and or South America. And what does the corridor mean for that opportunity, and also to integrate it throughout our city? We also need a very integrated, comprehensive transportation system to support our workforce and to add mobility options for our residents. Family youth opportunities. You currently have several programs in human services that utilize public transportation services to their customers. And they actually acquire bulk transit passes for their customers to get to and from, whether it be doctor's appointments or human services. Quality physical environment, obviously, the opportunity to improve our physical environment for our transportation network, to improve safety and reduce congestion, not only for motorists but for cyclists and pedestrians. In terms of immediate next steps, we have advised through the mayor's letter earlier, a few weeks ago, that the city does desire to retain the corridor as a connectivity corridor in general, for the purposes I stated. The Commonwealth does have a $20 million interest in the corridor, and the federal government has a $5 million interest in the corridor. The $40 million acquisition, the balance was $15 million was paid from the city. There's currently a bill filed on the House side of the General Assembly to provide a legislative fix for that, so to speak. And that's sponsored by Delegate Villanueva. We anticipate that Senator Wagner is going to file a bill on the Senate side parallel with this one. And right now, and Mr. Stiles, correct if I'm wrong, but oversimplification is that the current language from the acquisition in 2010 and a following General Assembly action in 2011 states that the corridor is to be used to extend the Norfolk Light Rail system into Virginia Beach. So the bottom bullet there provides a little bit broader opportunity for transportation in terms of technology and different improvements, including a shared use pathway within the corridor. And probably the most important part that's not on the slide is that we're advocating that that project shall commence by 2027. So it basically extends the agreement for 10 years before you would have to move forward with any type of improvement of the corridor, is what the legislation we're seeking does. In terms of a recommended path forward, again, focusing on the corridor and citywide, a new transit plan for the city. We believe the corridor can be used and currently is used for above and below ground utilities. There are certain franchise utilities that may be interested in adding new infrastructure or replacing old infrastructure within the corridor. It's been in the last 3 city bikeways and trail plan as a top priority to improve the corridor as a major east-west shared use pathway network. And if you're doing that in terms of utilities and shared use pathway, that you don't preclude the opportunity to provide high capacity transit in the future within that corridor. And I believe there's opportunities for innovation as well. You know, could this corridor be improved simply as a 2-lane road with shoulders and a shared use pathway for something like autonomous vehicle test track, autonomous vehicle shared ride services? And if so, can that be cohabitated with HRT, you know, say an express bus route or so? And I think these are opportunities that are worth exploring and what some other regions around the country have done. In terms of utilities, you have almost every type of utility, franchise utility, that there is within the corridor. HRSD has in their capital improvement program to add infrastructure within the Virginia Beach Boulevard corridor, and just from very cursory discussions have indicated that there may be opportunity to provide some of that infrastructure within the right-of-way instead. And in doing so, there might be an opportunity for them to build parts of the shared use pathway with that. But again, just cursory conversations with them so far. Again, when we build the shared use pathway within the corridor, if that's what council desires to do, that any utilities be replaced or added new in a way that does not preclude the opportunity to have a shared use pathway, and reserve space for future improvement within the corridor for high-capacity transit or some type of innovative technology to move people. Again, it's been a top priority of your city bikeways and trails plan, and that when improving the corridor, we need to be as efficient as possible in planning it. This is a map of your 2011 Bikeways and Trails Plan, and Mr. Wilcox has advised me that they're going to start updating that plan soon. And a lot of those dashed lines, which are proposed either wide sidewalks or shared use pathways, have since been improved. But the main corridor that we're looking at is the east-west corridor, right down the heart of the developed part of the city. So we did study the what it would cost to improve the corridor in concert with high-capacity transit, and we completed that in January 2016 because we wanted to marry that with the light rail extension project, or at least cost out and do the technical analysis of what that would mean. And we broke it up into segments because you have some natural and man-made barriers that provide these natural breaks to look at it that way, whether it be above-grade crossings like Independence Boulevard, or water crossings like Thalia Creek and London Bridge Creek, and things of that nature. So all told, you know, at a very cursory study level, it's roughly $62 million for that project as a standalone project. You currently do have a capital project called a light rail corridor shared use pathway at $17.7 million that is programmed in your CIP, but that is for Independence Constitution Drive to Newtown Road. Keep taking into consideration high capacity transit with it. So there are a few regions that have done busways, and those are basically, for the most part, two-lane roads that move people through high-frequency bus service. And it's not BRT. These are buses that have stops or stations at grade. They're conventional-sized buses. Pittsburgh has one that is parallel to a freight corridor that goes right into the heart of their city for commuting. And then South Miami-Dade County has one that goes to and from the northern part of South Florida to and from commuting to Miami, including the Hard Rock Stadium itself. So we looked at, and Mr. Wheeler looked at what it would cost to improve the corridor just from Newtown Road, the Newtown Road station, to Constitution Drive Town Center for basically a two-lane road with shoulders and a shared use pathway and a sidewalk along it. We believe, again, it could be an opportunity for both express bus service and potentially autonomous vehicle test track. And what it comes in at from a construction standpoint is $100 million. And when you add the soft costs and contingency, you're looking at about $131 million for that improvement just within that part of the corridor. And that was using a lot of the technical information due diligence done during the Virginia Beach Light Rail Extension preliminary engineering to 30%. Some things that were not included, because again, there's a difference between express bus service and bus rapid transit. You don't have large articulated buses. This does not include the park and ride facilities. That cost estimate does not. It does not include the buses themselves or any additional right-of-way acquisition that may or may not be needed. Just to give some context for that cost estimate. So in terms of developing a new transit plan for our residents and visitors, we believe we can work with the communications office to develop more interactive ways and comprehensive ways to get the public and stakeholders' feedback during this process. We believe the most meaningful way to improve public transportation is by increasing the frequency of bus service, adding more evening and weekend hours, and adding a few new routes as well, especially along areas that have our large employment centers or areas of higher density households as well. So we want to take part of 2017, the first part of 2017, to do that and develop a plan that has a consensus to hopefully implement in the same time frame that we were looking to do with the Virginia Beach Light Rail Extension Project within the next 2 years. Some from high-level conceptual cost estimates. These are kind of the costs. I've been listening to a lot of the council discussion about a large number of big-ticket items out there, stormwater or otherwise, and wanted to give you an idea of some of the costs that you could be looking at if you choose to expand public transportation in Virginia Beach using some of these options. Went over the first two. The third bullet there is what we were looking at if we doubled bus service hours. So knowing those service hours might be slightly different, but say if you doubled bus service hours, depending on how you lay those service areas out, frequency of buses, evenings, weekends, new routes, you go from about $4.1 million to $9.2 million a year in terms of O&M costs. And then the capital costs, what HRT has communicated, without state funding for this is roughly $13.5 million. And this is just a scenario for the buses, the capital needed to support those. So going down the home stretch here, our goal is to get a consensus as much as possible within the community about how we expand public transportation in our city, and ultimately work with HRT and the state to do that and put it into effect in or about fiscal year 2019 to 2020. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have and go from there.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. We have Rosemary and then Barbara.
Do you think there's much of an opportunity to go after some grants, especially for the shared use path with, you know, iced tea and some of the non-traditional transportation modes?
I do.
The federal government will give grants for these.
We've put together, most through Wayne's leadership in Public Works, an extensive what's called a Tiger grant program, very, very competitive grant that we submitted a few years ago. When you do that, you do have to go back through the NEPA process when you go for federal funding. There might be opportunities for state funding to do that. But when you do that, you need the matching funds to go along with it. So having some of those funds that have been programmed already to be available to at least match would be needed in order to go after those grants and be competitive for them. We've been very competitive with grants for the Thayer Creek Greenway.
You really have.
Awesome.
Barbara?
Well, I think you've done a lot of work and you've given us a lot of information, and that's good. But I think it would be very backward if we developed a plan and then took it to the public. I still say, since I've been saying the week after the referendum, we need to go to the public first and get some feedback as to really what they're looking for. I thought at our meeting last week, we said, let's have a community conversations before the retreat. I just think we're asking for another road of failure if we develop a plan and go presenting it. I really think we need the input from the public right now. That's my first point. Secondly, you know, we've been talking about this for 30 years, since I was on the old TRT board and so forth. But this it's a chicken or an egg thing. You know, we look at ridership of the buses and we say, well, it won't work in Virginia Beach. We've got such a low ridership. But if you don't provide enough transit, it's going to fail because it's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable for people to have a 2-hour ride to work and a 2-hour ride back. And it's not acceptable that we require people to have an automobile to have a job that probably is not paying a whole lot more than minimum wage. That's not good either. So I think having a workable transit system that really does provide acceptable options and opportunities is so important, and we just can't seem to get there. And you know, I'm really not sure how we do it, but I know that the Bikes and Trails folks, you know, we've been getting emails, build this path, and but we're then only looking at a small segment of the community that would be available to that. Plus, I don't think that $17 million thing that we came up with, the shared use path in relation to light rail, is even viable, because who's going to be building those flyovers for a shared use path? That's not going to happen. You know, we have to either look at some realistic facts that, you know, if we do go a bike path route, that it, you know, be, you know, what we could really afford to do for a bike path. And I think it's going to be a long way from what that other one was designed to be. So I really think we kind of have to start very simply, but I think we really need to talk with the public first to get their input. But if we're going to have real mobility options, And you're right, the gas prices, I mean, if we were at $3 a gallon on gas, or what, it almost got to $4, I bet you that result on the referendum would have been very different. Because, when people were paying $50 to fill up their gas tank, everybody, well, I don't have any option. It's these options, and these things just kind of go in cycles depending on other factors around. And then there's the issue of parking. As long as free parking is available around in Virginia Beach everywhere, then, yeah, everybody wants to take their car. But the day is going to come when there's going to be paid parking. Because, if we're going to require everybody to have a car, and everything that develops in that corridor is going to have to build a parking garage, they're not going to be free the way they are in town center because it's an SSD. Those all things are going to be changing over the next 20 years, much less 50 years. And so I think it's such a really broad question. We've got to start talking about all the options, and I think we have to be very realistic, but I think we really have to have some input from the public sooner rather than later.
I think everyone would agree with you on that. I see a lot of heads nodding as everyone, I mean, we got to get the public's input.
Is there any movement on doing the community conversation before the retreat?
If that is your desire, as I've heard, we will make it happen.
But I think I think it's our desire, but I sure want some information out there about what's out there.
I don't want to get ahead of you, John. Go ahead. I don't think you can competently execute a meaningful engagement with the public if we're having a retreat in February. I think one of the things that people already feel out in the street, maybe I get it more than others, is that no one has listened to what they already told us. And they want to tell us what's on their mind. And when you say, and that they don't want light rail, they're not so obviously big on some of this transit stuff as we see it here, because you want feedback, you got to know what people are thinking. And I think you got to hear what they're thinking. They moved here for a suburban lifestyle. They think we're driving down their throat some urban land institute's idea of how we should all live and collaborate. And the marketplace, that as they see it, that's not what they feel. You might think they're wrong, but I'm just telling you how they communicate to you. And when you say things on the slides like, there was on that one thing, the city is not doing anything currently, I think until we hear something different from the public, they don't want us to be concerned, not currently and not next week and not in 5 years. I think they think that, hey, we've got a lot of bills on our plate. Now, Barbara, you're right about the transit. Until you know what it works, you don't know what's well. So you go back and look at these charts, and you are correct. And that's why I've often said, and I still say, we don't know what the latent demand is for transit. We can't afford everything. Let's look at these numbers and understand the data on those charts. In fact, I've actually went out to some bus stops and talked to people. It's kind of just interesting. And if you only could do a few places and get the frequency of every 15 to 20 minutes, which is the frequency that gets people to say, I can really rely upon a bus and be that choice rider that Jim often talks about, then you've got to provide choice rider frequencies. And I know we've run into this issue, maybe with the new administration, that isn't as crazy as some of the other ones up in Washington, that we could get past this, we can't do free bus service in Virginia Beach unless the whole HRT system is transit. Maybe I'll talk to Secretary Chow, maybe we can get a different view. But if not, maybe we can find another way to get to the same angle, Mr. Mayor, of getting there. And let's just see who would use it. Because when you look at car ownership levels are high in the city. They're huge. And if you're going to get someone to give up their car to be a choice, you have to offer not considerably time advantage to give up all the other things they do en route with their car. Because in their mind, once you have the vehicle, it's just the marginal cost, right? All the future looks 10 years out are not looking at any big drive up in energy prices. They're not. So you can look at that and say it isn't going to get any more expensive, relatively speaking, than it is today. So if we're looking at this, I think we have to understand the narrative behind these numbers. Not just the numbers, but we lost 9%. Is it all gas prices? Is it changing where employment is? But if we I think the only way you're going to find out is to take a test somewhere, increase the frequency, and extend it past those late hours when they work at the hotel so it still can get them home after midnight. Try it. Can't just do a week or 6 months. I think you got to try it and see is there really a latent demand, or is it really at this point in time the free marketplace and people's marketplace choices isn't transit. And And you might not like that answer. I'm sure the land planners wouldn't like that answer, but it might be the answer. And I think we have to listen to what the marketplace is telling us. And so right now the marketplace is telling us that we're thriving. So who's being disadvantaged? Your point's well taken. Who are the disadvantaged people by this? And to what extent do we improve service? And then they need to figure out how to get located within those areas where we can service high density, because we can't provide the same frequency everywhere. And people need to, part of that housing in Wichita, I hope would be to that end. Getting people who need cars to locate in the areas where we can cost effectively provide higher levels of service. And I hope that's the conversation we can have. I think we can do something, but we really, it isn't just going out and having a bunch of boards. I think it'll get people to tell you why they voted no. Why are they looking for transit, and get them to express themselves. And I'm right, but not to give them a plan. I think they want to be listened to. They don't want to have another proposal put in their face. That's just my take.
And also why they voted yes.
Yeah,
True,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
true.
And see, this is, I'll be very quick because this could take us all day. That's not the point of this briefing, but don't argue with what you said. But at the same time, is there another group of a smaller amount of people that it's a different generation that is, you know, I saw the charrette that they did over here on the Kellum property, Kellum Eaton property. And this lady, you know, who has gotten paid a lot of money, a great planner, was brought in by the developer. And she talked about brain drain. And she talked about, you know, what was required, you know, for that basically young people were coming to live where they wanted to live before they looked for the job. I mean, this is coming from a professional planner.
That's true.
And it's true. And I think where I'm coming from is that this city has always been pretty diverse in what it's had to offer, you know, in many different categories. And I think that that's where we got to also be when it comes to transportation opportunities, and for these perhaps younger group of people. That might be the wrong term, younger group, but, you know, looking for this type of opportunity. And these are the type of discussions that I think are going to be critical. And the thing is, I don't know that we'll end up with a total agreement by any means, because they're different mindsets, they're different wants, but you know, they're all just as important. Everyone's. All right, I've spoken enough. Anybody else got anything to add? It was a good presentation to get us rolling here, get thinking about things. Okay. Yes, sir.
So what am I doing?
Well, I think that's a great question, and what I would
can set up tables with proctors and just let people talk.
What I would suggest,
yes, sir.
And again, you'll see the nods or the whatever. Let's not try to push this thing before the retreat, because the retreat is in how many weeks? Yeah, I mean, I don't want to have something, you know, try to fit something in without, you know, really something well thought out. But, you know, I know I'm thinking like at the State of the City speech. I'm going to sit back and say to the public, we want your input on where we go with transit. You know, and I think it might be more than one meeting, ladies and gentlemen. And there might be more than one location that we do it.
It might be that we're not the ones who are going to be able to solve the transit issue.
Exactly.
It may be that somebody else is going to have to solve the transit issue in this region first, and that's probably Norfolk. They're going to have to solve the transit issue, because unless they do it, it won't be effective. We'll be sitting out here at the end of a line that doesn't do anything. So unless Norfolk solves their transit issues of getting people to the naval base, of getting people to the airport, and so forth,
The university.
we're throwing money down the drain. That's what it comes down to.
But unless they see us willing to cooperate and build a system along with them, it's not going to make a regional system, which is what everyone says we need.
That's a good point. Good point, Barbara.
Well, I think that I think we should begin now to schedule some some meetings, and maybe more than one, certainly, with different groups of people, because depending on where you have it and so forth, you will be getting different perspectives. I mean, I don't think we want to do anything that only reaches one of the audiences and potential users or non-users, but I really think it's a major mistake if we think we are supposed to go out and present a plan.
I think everyone's in agreement on that.
But I think we're not going to be able to do any more discussing at our retreat than we're doing right here today unless we at least begin getting this feedback.
But this has been a good discussion. And the one thing I bet you $1 that I'm going to say 99.9% of people agree on is they do want a bike path and they do want a walking path. Now, I'm going to tell you, I bet you I've heard that everywhere I go. Please don't stop that process.
But at what cost? I mean, can we afford to do that?
I didn't say let's do it. I said I know what people want.
Well, we don't want to go out and use that right of way in a way that's going to preempt it or prevent us from using it for an effective transportation system.
Absolutely.
So let's be careful about building something on it right now. We've got the right to hold on to it now, so let's just do that.
Have we gotten a response?
Well,
They're working on it.
if the bill passes.
They're working on it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I do remind the council you have 5 Tuesdays in this month, and if it is, I know we like our 5th Tuesday, take them when we got them. I'm sorry to throw it out there, but if you want the round table, we can find the round table, we can staff the round table, we can take the input, we can put boards up, but not present anything other than the information you had today, and we can allow people an opportunity to provide their input. We can document that, we can compile it, and we can at least have it for you probably by that Friday so that you at least have something in advance as a first meeting.
Why don't you see what we can do?
Yes, sir.
Good. All right, very good. Good conversation, council. Oh, did you want to say something, Sharon? Okay, you were smiling over there. Good.